I'm standing in my kitchen on Christmas Eve, watching my son walk through my front door with his mistress on his arm, and I know that before this night is over, I'm going to destroy his entire world. My name is Vivian. I'm 64 years old, and I've spent the last 3 months planning the most spectacular Christmas gift my daughter-in-law will ever receive. You see, some women wait for karma to handle their cheating husbands. Some women cry and forgive and pretend everything's fine. But me? I believe in taking matters into my own hands, especially when the cheater is my own son, and the woman he's destroying is the closest thing I'll ever have to a daughter. Let me back up. 7 years ago, my husband died of a heart attack. Dropped dead at 59, leaving me alone in this house we'd spent 30 years filling with memories. My son Brandon was 28 then, already married to Sarah for 2 years, and I'll never forget what she did. While Brandon was busy sorting through his father's financial papers and making arrangements that made him look like the dutiful son, Sarah sat with me every single night for 3 months. She didn't talk unless I wanted to talk. She didn't offer meaningless platitudes. She just sat there, holding my hand, keeping me from drowning in the silence. That's when I knew this girl was special. This girl was family in a way that transcended bloodlines. So 8 years ago, when Brandon came to me saying they needed a place to live while they saved for a house of their own, I didn't hesitate. I owned a modest 3-bedroom home across town that I'd inherited from my mother. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid, paid off, and empty. I told Brandon and Sarah they could live there, rent-free. I wanted to help them build their future. But I told Brandon something else that day too, something I made crystal clear. I said, "Son, this house is going to Sarah if your marriage ever falls apart. She's the one I trust to honor it." Brandon laughed. He actually laughed and said, "Mom, nothing's going to happen to us. We're solid." 7 years later, I'm about to prove just how wrong he was. It started 3 months ago with something small. Brandon came over for Sunday dinner, something that used to be sacred in our family, but had become rare since he made partner at his law firm. Sarah couldn't make it that week because she was visiting her sick mother in Ohio. After we ate, Brandon went to wash his hands, and when he came back to the table, I noticed something. His wedding ring was sitting on the edge of my bathroom sink. Just sitting there, like a piece of forgotten pocket change. I called him the next day. "Brandon, you left your wedding ring here." His response made my blood run cold. "Oh, just hold on to it, Mom. The band's getting tight anyway. I'll pick it up next time." A man who truly loves his wife doesn't forget his wedding ring like it's a pair of reading glasses. A man who truly loves his wife doesn't let that ring leave his finger unless he's deliberately taking it off for a reason he doesn't want to explain. I knew. In that moment, with absolute certainty, I knew my son was cheating on Sarah. I didn't confront him. I didn't call Sarah. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd do in my life. I hired a private investigator. His name was James Chin, a retired police detective who came recommended by my attorney. I met him at a coffee shop, slid an envelope across the table with a retainer fee, and said 6 words, "I need to know the truth." 2 weeks later, James called me. "Mrs. Patterson, can we meet? I have your report." His voice told me everything I needed to know before I even opened that folder. The affair had been going on for 14 months. 14 months of lies, hotel rooms, secret dinners, and stolen weekends while Sarah was at home injecting fertility hormones into her stomach because they'd been trying to have a baby for 4 years. 14 months of my son looking his wife in the eye and telling her he loved her while he was building an entire second life with a 28-year-old lawyer named Amber from his firm. The photos James gave me were damning. Brandon and Amber kissing in parking garages, entering hotels together, sitting at romantic restaurants where Brandon had told Sarah he was meeting clients. There were timestamps on everything, dates that corresponded with nights Brandon had told Sarah he was working late. And the worst part? In several of the photos, I could see Brandon's left hand clearly. No wedding ring. He'd been taking it off every time he was with her. I sat in my car in that coffee shop parking lot and cried for an hour. Not for Brandon, he'd made his choices, but for Sarah. Sweet, kind, generous Sarah who taught second grade and spent her weekends volunteering at the animal shelter. Sarah who still brought me flowers every Sunday and called me just to check in. Sarah who was currently pumping herself full of hormones and blaming herself for not being able to get pregnant while my son was busy betraying her with someone else. That night, I made a decision. I was going to tell Sarah, but I was going to do it in a way that gave her power. Not just the truth, but the means to completely rebuild her life without Brandon. I called my attorney the next morning. I want to transfer the deed of the house Brandon and Sarah live in. I want it in Sarah's name only. How fast can you make that happen? My attorney, a sharp woman named Helen who'd handled my mother's estate, paused. Vivian, are you sure? That's a significant asset. I told her I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. She had the papers drawn up within a week. I signed them, got them notarized, filed them with the county clerk. And just like that, the house my son thought was his became Sarah's property. Solely, legally, irrevocably. But I didn't tell anyone. Not Sarah. Not Brandon. Not even my sister Ruth, who calls me every morning like clockwork. I kept that deed in a folder in my closet, waiting for the right moment. The perfect moment. And then, 2 weeks ago, Brandon called me. Hey Mom, Sarah and I are coming over for Christmas Eve dinner. Is that still okay? I said of course it was. And then he added, oh, and I'm bringing a colleague from work. Her name's Amber. Her family's in Seattle and flights got canceled, so she's spending Christmas alone. I figured we could include her. The audacity. The absolute, breathtaking audacity of this man. He was going to bring his mistress to my house, to our family Christmas, and parade her in front of his wife, while expecting all of us to play along with his charade. That's when I knew. Christmas Eve. It was happening Christmas Eve. I called James Chin and paid him extra for rush service. I need everything compiled into a report, printed photos, and all the digital evidence on a USB drive. I need it in 3 days. He delivered it in 2. Then I went shopping. I bought the most beautiful wrapping paper I could find, silver with white snowflakes. I bought a white satin ribbon. I packed everything into a department store box, the USB drive, the photos, the investigation report, and one more thing. The deed to the house, with Sarah's name on it in official black ink. I wrapped that box like it contained precious jewels. Because in a way, it did. It contained Sarah's freedom. The last piece of my plan fell into place 5 days ago when Sarah called me, crying. She asked if she could come over, and when she arrived, her eyes were red and swollen. Vivian, I need to tell you something, and I'm so ashamed. My heart broke as I watched this beautiful, strong woman crumble. I think Brandon's cheating on me. She told me about finding a hotel receipt in his jacket pocket 3 weeks earlier. About seeing charges on their credit card for expensive dinners she never attended. About smelling perfume on his shirts that wasn't hers. But I don't have proof, she whispered. And part of me is terrified to look for it because what if I'm right? What do I do then? I held her while she cried, and I made a decision in that moment. I asked her one question. Sarah, if you had proof, solid, undeniable proof, and if you had the means to leave him without being homeless or financially destroyed, would you? She looked up at me with those tear-stained eyes and said, yes. God help me, yes. I can't keep living like this. So I told her. Not about the investigation, not yet. But I told her I had something planned for Christmas Eve. Something that would give her answers and options. I told her to trust me and to pack a bag for Brandon. Just his essentials. Have it ready. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head, but she nodded. Okay. I trust you. Now here we are. Christmas Eve. 6 o'clock in the evening. Sarah is in my kitchen wearing the red apron I gave her last year, basting a turkey she's been preparing since 5 this morning. The house smells like rosemary and butter and cinnamon. Christmas music plays softly from my speakers. The tree lights twinkle in the living room. Everything looks perfect, festive, warm. But I can feel the storm coming, and I'm ready for it. The doorbell rings. My heart starts pounding, but I keep my face calm. I walk to the door and open it, and there he is. My son. Brandon is 35 years old, tall and handsome in his expensive suit, with his father's dark eyes and my stubborn jaw. And next to him, with her arm looped through his like she has every right to be there, is Amber. She's young and pretty in that polished, corporate way, perfect makeup, designer dress, confidence radiating off her like heat. She's everything Sarah isn't, and I can see immediately why Brandon was attracted to her. She represents the life he thinks he deserves now that he's successful. The trophy. The upgrade. Mom, this is Amber, Brandon says, smiling like nothing in the world is wrong. She's a colleague from the firm. Her family's in Seattle and the flights got canceled because of the snow, so I told her she could spend Christmas Eve with us. You don't mind, right? The way he says it isn't really a question. It's a statement disguised as a question, because Brandon has become the kind of man who assumes everyone will accommodate him. I smile. It takes every ounce of self-control I have, but I smile. Of course not, I say, stepping aside. We always have room for one more. I watch them walk into my house, my son and his mistress, and I think about that box under my Christmas tree, wrapped in silver paper with a white satin bow, and I smile wider. From the kitchen, I hear Sarah's voice. Is that them? She comes around the corner, wiping her hands on her apron, and I watch her face when she sees Amber. For just a second, maybe half a second, something flickers in her eyes. Surprise. Hurt. Recognition, maybe, though she's never met this woman. But then Sarah does what Sarah always does. She smiles. She extends her hand. Hi, I'm Sarah. It's so nice to meet you. Brandon didn't mention we'd have an extra guest, but there's plenty of food. Amber shakes her hand with a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. Thanks for having me. I hope I'm not intruding. Oh, but you are, I think. You're intruding on a marriage, a family, a life. But soon you'll understand exactly what kind of man you've been sleeping with. We move into the living room, and I watch the evening unfold like a slow-motion car crash. Brandon seats Amber on the couch, in the spot where Sarah usually sits when we have family gatherings. Sarah notices. I see her notice. But she says nothing. She just goes back to the kitchen to finish preparing dinner. Brandon doesn't offer to help her. He doesn't follow her to ask if she needs anything. He sits next to Amber, pulls out his phone, and shows her something that makes her laugh. That laugh, high and tinkling and performative, echoes through my house like nails on a chalkboard. 20 minutes later, Sarah calls us to the table. She's outdone herself. The turkey is golden and perfect. There are mashed potatoes with real butter and cream, green beans with almonds, homemade rolls that are still steaming, cranberry sauce made from scratch, and that chocolate bourbon pecan pie, Brandon's favorite since he was 10 years old, sitting on the counter for dessert. Sarah has spent hours on this meal. Hours of love and effort and care. And when Brandon sits down, he looks at the turkey and says, "It looks a little dry, babe. Amber was just telling me about this amazing restaurant downtown that does a herb-crusted prime rib. Maybe we should try that next year." The table goes silent. Sarah's smile freezes on her face. Amber looks uncomfortable for about half a second before she laughs and touches Brandon's arm. "Oh, it looks wonderful, Sarah. Brandon's just spoiled because I've been talking about food all day. But the damage is done. Brandon has just insulted his wife's cooking in front of a stranger in my house on Christmas Eve." Sarah's hands tremble slightly as she starts serving the food, but she doesn't say a word. She just keeps smiling, that brave, breaking smile that makes me want to scream. Dinner continues, and it gets worse. Brandon barely speaks to Sarah. When she asks him to pass the salt, he hands it to Amber first. When she tries to tell a story about one of her students, Brandon interrupts her to share an anecdote about a case he won. Amber laughs at all his jokes, leans in close when he talks, and generally acts like Sarah doesn't exist. And Sarah, God, Sarah, just keeps serving food, refilling drinks, playing the perfect hostess while being slowly erased from her own marriage right in front of my eyes. I catch Sarah's eye across the table and I nod slightly. It's almost time. Just a little longer. After dinner, Sarah clears the table alone. Brandon and Amber move to the couch, sitting close together, looking at something on his phone. I help Sarah in the kitchen, and I can see her hands are shaking as she loads the dishwasher. Vivian, she whispers, I can't do this much longer. I squeeze her shoulder. You won't have to. Trust me. We return to the living room, and I make the announcement that's going to change everything. Who wants to open presents? Brandon looks up from his phone, mildly interested. Amber perks up, probably hoping there's something for her under the tree. Sarah sits in the armchair by herself, still wearing that apron, still holding on to her composure by a thread. I start with Brandon. Sarah has gotten him an expensive leather briefcase, the one he mentioned wanting months ago, before everything fell apart. She hands it to him, and he opens it with barely a glance. Thanks, babe. Yeah, this is great. He doesn't kiss her, doesn't hug her, just sets it aside like it's nothing. I give Amber a candle I grabbed from my regift closet. She seems disappointed, but says thank you. Then I stand up, and my heart is racing now, pounding so hard I'm sure everyone can hear it. Sarah's turn, I announce. I walk to the tree and retrieve that silver box from its hiding spot behind the larger presents. It's heavier than it looks, weighty with the truth it contains. Sarah's eyes light up when she sees it. She's always been so easy to please, so grateful for every small kindness. It makes what Brandon's done to her even more unforgivable. Vivian, you didn't have to, she starts, but I cut her off gently. Open it, I say. I think you'll find it very enlightening. Sarah smiles and carefully unties the white satin bow. She's the type who saves wrapping paper to reuse it, who takes care with every small thing. The paper falls away, revealing the plain white box underneath. Brandon isn't even watching. He's scrolling through his phone again, completely oblivious to what's about to happen. Amber is checking her makeup in a compact mirror. Neither of them has any idea that their entire world is about to implode. Sarah lifts the lid of the box, and everything stops. Her face goes completely still. The color drains from her cheeks. Her hands freeze on the edges of the box. Because inside, staring up at her, is the truth. The USB drive in its clear plastic case. The stack of photographs, face down but with one corner visible showing Brandon and Amber in an embrace. The investigation report with private investigation, confidential, stamped across the top. And beneath all of that, the cream-colored envelope with her name written in my handwriting. Sarah looks up at me, and I see everything in her eyes. Shock, grief, gratitude, fear, relief. She knows what this is. She knows what I've done. And most importantly, she knows what this means. Slowly, with hands that are shaking so badly I'm afraid she'll drop everything, Sarah picks up the first photograph and turns it over. Even from where I'm sitting, I can see what it shows. Brandon and Amber, kissing in what looks like an underground parking garage. The timestamp in the corner reads 3 weeks ago, right around the time Sarah found that hotel receipt. The room is so quiet I can hear my own heartbeat. Sarah flips through more photos, each one more damning than the last. Brandon and Amber at a restaurant, gazing at each other over candlelight. Brandon and Amber entering a hotel, his hand on the small of her back. Brandon and Amber in what looks like an apartment, visible through a window, wrapped around each other. Every photo is time-stamped. Every photo is clear. Every photo is undeniable proof of what Brandon has been doing for more than a year while his wife suffered through fertility treatments and blamed herself for their distance. Sarah? I say softly. The sound of my voice seems to break whatever spell has fallen over the room. Why don't you look at what's in the cream envelope? Sarah's hands are trembling so violently now that she nearly tears the envelope as she opens it. She pulls out the papers inside, legal documents, official and formal, and I watch her eyes scan the first page. Then the second. Then she looks up at me with an expression I'll never forget. It's pure, overwhelming shock mixed with something else. Something that looks almost like hope. Vivian, she whispers, and her voice breaks on my name. This is... She can't finish the sentence. She just stares at the papers like they might disappear if she looks away. So I finish it for her. The deed to your house, I say clearly, loudly enough that Brandon finally looks up from his phone. Transferred into your name. Solely your name. Signed, notarized, and filed with the county clerk as of 5 days ago. The room explodes. Brandon shoots to his feet, his phone clattering to the floor. What? His face has gone pale, then red, his eyes wild. Mom, what the hell are you talking about? Amber's eyes dart between all of us, confusion and alarm written across her perfect face. But I keep my eyes on Sarah, watching as she straightens in her chair, as something shifts in her expression. The trembling stops. The tears that were forming in her eyes evaporate. She stands up, and when she speaks, her voice is clear and strong and nothing like the broken whisper from a moment ago. You want to see, Brandon? Sarah holds up the first photograph, her hand steady now. This is you and Amber from November 28th. I was at home that night throwing up from the fertility hormones, and you told me you were working late on the Henderson case. She picks up another photo. December 5th. The Riverside Hotel. I was at my mother's house because you said you needed quiet to prepare for trial. Photo after photo, she recounts the dates, the lies, the nights she spent alone while he was with someone else. Brandon's mouth opens and closes, but no sound comes out. He looks like a fish drowning in air. Then Sarah picks up the USB drive, holding it between her thumb and forefinger like it's a grenade. And this, she says, her voice getting stronger with every word, according to this investigation report, contains recordings. Phone calls, voicemails, text messages, hours of evidence of your affair with Amber. She looks at my son, her husband of 9 years, and I see something I've never seen in Sarah before. Fury. Pure, righteous fury. 14 months, Brandon. The affair has been going on for 14 months. We were still going to fertility treatments 14 months ago. I was injecting hormones into my stomach every single night, crying myself to sleep because I thought I was the reason we couldn't have a baby, and you were already with her. The silence that follows is deafening. Brandon's face has gone from red to white, his jaw working but no words coming out. Amber has stood up, grabbing her purse, clearly wanting to run but frozen by the sheer horror of the moment. And Sarah, my Sarah, stands there holding the evidence of her husband's betrayal, transformed from a victim into something else entirely. Something powerful. I stand up and move to Sarah's side. The house you've been living in for 8 years, Brandon? The house you thought was yours? It was always mine. I told you when you moved in that it would go to Sarah if your marriage ever fell apart. You laughed. You said nothing would ever happen. But something did happen. You happened. You destroyed your marriage, and now you're going to face the consequences. Brandon finally finds his voice, and it comes out as a roar. You can't do this. That's my house. I've lived there for 8 years, I have rights. But I just shake my head, and I'm calm now, perfectly calm, because everything is going exactly according to plan. You have no rights to a house I owned and chose to give to someone else. The deed is legal. The transfer is complete. And now, legally, you're just a guest in Sarah's home. A guest she can ask to leave whenever she wants. And that's when I ask the question that's been building all evening, the question that's going to determine everything that happens next. I look at Sarah, standing there with evidence of her husband's betrayal in her hands and the deed to a house in her name, and I ask her the most important question of her life. Sarah, do you want him to leave? Sarah's answer comes out as a whisper, but in the dead silence of my living room, it sounds like thunder. Yes. Just that one word. Yes. And I watch my son's entire world begin to crumble. But before Brandon can process what's happening, before he can launch into the defense I know is coming, Sarah does something I don't expect. She sets down the box carefully, almost reverently, and she looks directly at Amber. Not at Brandon. At Amber. How long have you known he was married? Sarah's voice is steady, curious even, like she's asking about the weather. Amber's perfectly made-up face goes pale. He said you were separated. He said the divorce was almost final. Sarah nods slowly, like this makes perfect sense. Of course he did. Then she turns to Brandon, and the look on her face could freeze fire. When were you going to tell me about the divorce, Brandon? Before or after you moved Amber into our house? Our house. She said our house. Not her house, even though the deed in her hand says otherwise. And I realized something in that moment. Sarah isn't just angry. She's not just hurt. She's been playing a role too, just like I have, and now the performance is over. Brandon takes a step toward her, his hands up like he's approaching a wild animal. Sarah, baby, please. Let's talk about this privately. This is between us, but Sarah cuts him off with a laugh. An actual laugh, sharp and brittle and nothing like her usual warm chuckle. Between us? You brought your mistress to your mother's house for Christmas dinner and made me serve her like hired help. You forfeited privacy when you decided to humiliate me in front of the only family I have left. The word humiliate hangs in the air like smoke, and I see Brandon flinch. Good. He should flinch. He should feel every ounce of shame he's been avoiding for 14 months. But instead of apologizing, instead of falling to his knees and begging for forgiveness, Brandon does what weak men always do when they're caught. He attacks. You want to know why? His voice rises, defensive and cruel. You want to know why I found someone else? Look at yourself, Sarah. You're a small-town teacher who talks about finger painting and spelling tests. You make casseroles and watch home improvement shows. Amber is successful. She's ambitious. She's sitting right here listening to you destroy your marriage? Amber interrupts and everyone turns to look at her. She's standing now, clutching her designer purse like a shield, and her face has gone from pale to flushed with what looks like genuine embarrassment. Brandon, I didn't sign up for this. You told me you were separated. You told me the divorce was happening. You never mentioned that you were living with your wife, that you were still. She looks at Sarah, and for the first time, I see something like remorse in her eyes. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was like this. And that's when Sarah asks the question that changes everything. Did you love him? The room goes silent. Amber stares at Sarah like she's been slapped. What? Sarah repeats the question, slower this time. Did you love him? Or was he just exciting? Just something different from whatever boring life you were living. I watch Amber's face cycle through emotions, surprise, defensiveness, and then something that looks almost like relief. Like someone finally asked her to tell the truth and she's grateful for the permission. I thought I did, Amber says quietly. He was charming. Attentive. He made me feel special. But tonight. She looks at Brandon, and I see disgust flicker across her features. Tonight, I watched him treat his wife like a servant. I watched him insult her cooking, ignore her when she spoke, parade me around like a trophy. And I realized if this is how he treats someone he promised to love forever, how would he eventually treat me? She picks up her coat from the back of the couch. I'm done. This is messy and complicated, and honestly, Brandon, if you could do this to her, you'd do it to me too. Brandon lunges toward her. Amber, wait. You can't leave now. But Amber is already at the door, and she pauses just long enough to look back at Sarah. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry I was part of this. Then she's gone. The door closes behind her with a soft click that somehow sounds louder than if she'd slammed it. And just like that, Brandon loses his mistress and his marriage in the same moment. The silence that follows is thick and suffocating. Brandon stands in the middle of my living room, his expensive suit suddenly looking rumpled, his face a mask of shock and rage and something that might be fear. He turns to Sarah, and I can see him calculating, trying to figure out which angle will work, which manipulation will land. He chooses tears. His eyes fill up, his voice breaks, and he takes a step toward her with his hands outstretched. Sarah, please. I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. I know I've been terrible, but we can work through this. We're married. 9 years, Sarah. You can't throw away 9 years over one mistake. One mistake. He's calling 14 months of deliberate betrayal one mistake, like he accidentally left the milk out overnight. Sarah's face doesn't change. She just stands there, holding that box, and I wonder what she's thinking. Is she considering it? Is she about to fold, about to forgive him because that's what she's been conditioned to do her whole life? But then Sarah speaks, and her words cut through Brandon's performance like a knife. I knew. 2 words that make Brandon freeze mid-reach. What? Sarah's voice is stronger now, gaining momentum like a boulder rolling downhill. I knew about the affair. I've known for 2 months. The revelation hits the room like a bomb. Brandon's mouth falls open. I feel my own surprise, even though Sarah had told me she suspected. But knowing she suspected and hearing that she actually knew, are two very different things. Sarah continues, and with each word, I watch her transform from victim to something else entirely. Something powerful and sure and done with being small. I found the hotel receipt in your jacket pocket in October. The one from the riverside you were stupid enough to leave in your pocket when you asked me to take your suit to the dry cleaner. Then I started paying attention. Really paying attention. The credit card charges for restaurants I never went to. The new cologne you started wearing. The way you angled your phone away from me when texts came in. The late nights that became later and later. Brandon's tears have stopped. He's just staring at her now, and I can see him trying to process this information. If she knew, why didn't she confront him? Why did she keep playing the dutiful wife? Sarah answers the question before he can ask it. I wanted to believe you'd stop. I wanted to believe that the man I married was still in there somewhere, and he'd realize what he was throwing away. I told myself it was just a phase, that you were going through some kind of crisis, and if I just loved you enough, was patient enough, was good enough, you'd come back to me. Her voice cracks on those last words, and I see the pain underneath the anger. The deep, profound pain of someone who loved with everything she had and watched it mean nothing. But then tonight happened. Sarah looks at Brandon with something that might be pity. Tonight you brought her here. To Vivian's house. To our family Christmas. You sat there with your arm around another woman and made me serve you both. You insulted my cooking. You ignored me. You humiliated me in the one place I thought I was safe. And that's when I knew you're not going through a phase. This is who you are now. This is who you've chosen to be. I watch my son, and I see him grasping for any lifeline, any way to turn this around. He tries anger next, because manipulation didn't work. This is insane. His voice rises to a shout. You're going to believe some private investigator my mother hired? You're going to take her word over mine? She's trying to break us up because she never thought anyone was good enough for me. He turns to me, his eyes wild. This is what you wanted, isn't it, Mom? You've been waiting for a chance to turn her against me since the day we got married. The accusation is so absurd, so completely divorced from reality, that I actually laugh. It's not a kind laugh. Brandon, I've spent 9 years watching Sarah love you with a devotion you never deserved. I watched her put you through law school while she worked 2 jobs. I watched her plan surprise parties for you, cook your favorite meals, support your career while her own stayed stagnant because you needed her to be available for your schedule. I watched her inject herself with hormones that made her sick because you said you wanted children. And I kept my mouth shut because I believed you'd eventually see what you had and appreciate it. I stand up, and I'm shaking now, not with fear but with fury that's been building for months. But you didn't appreciate it. You took it for granted. And then you looked for something exciting, something new, something that made you feel important. So don't you dare stand in my house and accuse me of breaking up your marriage. You did that all by yourself. Brandon's face cycles through emotions so quickly I can barely track them. Shock, rage, shame, desperation. He tries one more approach, turning back to Sarah with his hands clasped like he's praying. Sarah, I love you. I know I haven't shown it, but I do. Amber was she was just something that happened. It didn't mean anything. You're my wife. You're the one I married. Doesn't that count for something? And for a second, just a second, I see Sarah waver. Because she's heard this before, maybe in her head, maybe in her dreams, the apology she's been waiting for, the declaration of love she's been desperate to hear. But then something shifts in her expression, and she shakes her head. No, Brandon. It doesn't count for anything. Because if it mattered to you, you wouldn't have done this in the first place. That's when I decide it's time to drive the final nail in. I walk over to where Sarah is standing and put my hand on her shoulder. Sarah, do you remember what I asked you 5 days ago when you came to me crying? When you told me you suspected Brandon was cheating? Sarah nods, her eyes never leaving Brandon's face. You asked me if I had proof and a way out, would I take it? And I said yes. I squeeze her shoulder gently. The proof is in that box. The way out is in your name on that deed. The house you've been living in, the house Brandon thinks is his, belongs to you now. Legally, completely, irrevocably yours. Brandon's face goes purple. That's theft. You can't just give away my house. But I just smile, and it's not a kind smile. It was never your house, Brandon. It was always mine. I inherited it from my mother. I let you and Sarah live there rent-free because I wanted to help you build your future. But I told you 8 years ago, the day you moved in, that if your marriage ever ended, the house would go to Sarah. You laughed. You said nothing would ever happen to us. Do you remember that? I watched the memory dawn on his face, the realization that this isn't some spur-of-the-moment revenge. This was planned, built into the foundation of his marriage like a failsafe. I remember, he whispers. Good. Then you remember that you were warned. You remember that you knew the terms. And you decided to violate them anyway. I turned to Sarah. The house is yours. The evidence is yours. The choice is yours. What do you want to do? Sarah looks down at the box in her hands, at the photographs, the USB drive, the investigation report, the deed. Then she looks at Brandon, and I see something in her eyes I've never seen before. Resolution. She walks to the front closet and opens it, pulling out 2 large suitcases I hadn't noticed before. They're packed full, bulging at the seams. I packed your things 3 days ago, Sarah says calmly. After Vivian told me she had something planned for tonight. Your clothes, your toiletries, your laptop, your files from the home office. Everything you need is in these bags. Everything else, we can arrange for you to pick up later with a police escort. The word police seems to snap something in Brandon. You're kicking me out? On Christmas Eve? Where am I supposed to go? Sarah's voice doesn't waver. I don't know, Brandon. Maybe the same hotels you've been taking Amber to. Maybe your friend Marcus's place. Maybe your car. I genuinely don't care. But you're not staying in my house another night. My house. She said my house. Not our house. And I see Brandon hear it too, see the reality finally sinking in. He turns to me one last time, desperate now. Mom, please. Talk to her. This is insane. You're going to let her throw me out on the street on Christmas. And this is the moment I've been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Because Brandon is still my son. I still remember the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them flowers. I still remember teaching him to ride a bike, sitting with him through nightmares, helping him with homework at the kitchen table. But I also remember the man who just stood in my living room and called his wife boring. Who brought his mistress to Christmas dinner. Who spent 14 months lying to everyone who loved him. So I look at my son, and I say the hardest words I've ever had to say. Brandon, I love you. I will always love you because you're my child. But I don't like you very much right now. And I'm ashamed of the man you've become. His face crumples like I've hit him. Mom, but I hold up my hand. Your father and I raised you better than this. We taught you to respect women, to honor your commitments, to be honest even when it's hard. And you've forgotten all of it. You became successful and decided that success meant you deserved whatever you wanted. Consequences be damned. So no, I'm not going to talk Sarah out of anything. I'm going to stand here and support her in making the hardest decision of her life, because that's what family does. Real family. The silence that follows is broken only by the sound of Christmas music still playing softly in the background, some cheerful song about peace on earth that feels horribly ironic. Brandon looks between Sarah and me, and I can see him realizing that there's no way out, no angle that will work, no manipulation that will land. He's lost. Completely, utterly lost. Fine, he says, and his voice is cold now, all pretense of emotion gone. Fine. You want to do this? We'll do this. But you're going to regret it, Sarah. Both of you. I'll fight for the house. I'll drag you through court. I'll make this so expensive and so ugly that you'll wish you'd just forgiven me. Sarah just looks at him, and I'm so proud of her in this moment I could burst. Do what you need to do, Brandon. But the house is legally mine. The evidence of your affair is documented and time-stamped, and I have a very good lawyer who's already reviewed everything. You can try to fight, but you'll lose. And in the process, you'll spend money you could use for a new apartment, and you'll destroy whatever shred of dignity you have left. She picks up the suitcases and holds them out to him. Go, Brandon. Before you say something else you can't take back. He doesn't take the suitcases. Not at first. He just stands there, staring at her like he's seeing her for the first time. Like he's finally realizing that the quiet, accommodating woman he married has steel running through her spine that he never noticed. Then, slowly, he reaches out and grabs the handles. His fingers brush Sarah's for just a second, and I see him open his mouth like he's going to say something, what, I don't know. An apology? Another manipulation? A final plea? But Sarah steps back, putting distance between them, and whatever words were coming die on his lips. Brandon walks to the door, dragging the suitcases behind him. At the threshold, he pauses and turns back. This isn't over. It's not a threat exactly. More like a promise. Or maybe a prayer. Sarah's response is quiet but firm. Yes, it is. It's been over for a long time. We just couldn't see it yet. And then she does something that surprises all of us. She slips her wedding ring off her finger, the simple gold band Brandon gave her 9 years ago, and she holds it out. Here. You should have this back. Brandon stares at the ring like it's a live snake. I don't want it. Sarah shrugs and sets it on the small table by the door. Then leave it there. But I'm done wearing it. The finality in her voice is absolute. There's no room for negotiation, no crack in her armor for Brandon to exploit. He realizes it too. I see the moment he understands that this is really happening, that he's really leaving, that his marriage is really over. His shoulders slump, and suddenly he looks older, smaller, diminished. Without another word, he walks out into the cold December night. The door closes behind him, and we hear his car start up. The engine roars to life, and then the sound fades as he drives away. The house is silent except for the Christmas music and the sound of Sarah's breathing. She's still standing by the door, staring at the space where Brandon was, and I'm not sure if she's going to collapse or scream or laugh. But she does none of those things. Instead, she walks very slowly back to the living room, sits down on the couch, and sets the box carefully on the coffee table. Then she looks up at me, and there are tears running down her face, but she's smiling. I did it, she whispers. I actually did it. I sit down next to her and pull her into my arms, and that's when she finally breaks. Not the quiet, restrained crying from before, but deep, racking sobs that shake her whole body. She cries for the marriage that ended, for the trust that was betrayed, for the years she spent trying to be enough for someone who was determined to find her insufficient, for the children she wanted that she'll never have with him, for the future she imagined that will never exist. And I hold her through all of it, stroking her hair, letting her soak my sweater with tears, whispering that she's going to be okay, that she did the right thing, that she's stronger than she knows. But here's what I'm not telling her in this moment. Here's what I'm holding back because she's not ready to hear it yet. Kicking Brandon out is just the beginning. The real battle is about to start, the divorce, the legal fights, the mutual friends who will take sides, the family members who will question her decision, the moments of doubt when she'll wonder if she made a mistake. And then there's the question of what happens next. Because Sarah isn't just losing a husband tonight. She's losing the identity she's built over 9 years. She's losing the future she planned. She's losing the version of herself that existed in relation to Brandon. So I'm asking you, the same question I'm asking myself as I sit here holding this sobbing woman in my arms, what comes after revenge? After you've exposed the betrayal, after you've reclaimed your power, after you've sent the cheater packing with his suitcases and his shame, then what? Because the night ends. Christmas morning comes. Reality sets in. And Sarah will have to wake up in a house that's legally hers, but full of memories of him. She'll have to figure out who she is when she's not someone's wife, not someone's support system, not someone's second choice. Will she be okay? Will the strength she showed tonight carry through to tomorrow and the day after and the year after? Will she rebuild? Will she thrive? Or will the loneliness creep in? Will the second-guessing start? Will she begin to wonder if having a flawed marriage was better than having no marriage at all? These are the questions that keep me up at night. These are the fears I don't voice because Sarah needs to believe right now that she did the right thing, that everything will be fine, that she's going to survive this. But survival isn't the same as thriving. Getting through something isn't the same as growing from it. And destroying something broken doesn't automatically mean you can build something better in its place. So as I sit here on Christmas Eve, holding my daughter-in-law while she cries and my son drives off into the night, I'm wondering, did I do the right thing? Did I help Sarah, or did I just transfer her from one kind of pain to another? Did giving her that box full of evidence and that deed with her name on it actually give her freedom, or did it just trade one prison for another? Because here's the truth that nobody talks about when they tell revenge stories. Revenge feels good in the moment. Watching the guilty party face consequences, seeing justice served, reclaiming your power, all of that feels righteous and necessary and good. But revenge doesn't heal you. It doesn't fill the hole that betrayal leaves. It doesn't answer the questions that keep you up at night. It doesn't tell you who you are when you're not defined by the person who hurt you. And right now, sitting in my living room with the Christmas tree lights twinkling and the turkey going cold in the kitchen and Sarah sobbing in my arms, I'm realizing that we're only at the beginning of the story. The revenge part is done. Brandon is gone. The evidence is out. The house is Sarah's. Justice, in its way, has been served. But now comes the part nobody prepares you for. Now comes the aftermath. The healing. The rebuilding. The long, hard work of figuring out what comes next when the person who betrayed you is gone, but the pain they caused remains. So let me ask you something, because I genuinely don't know the answer. Was I right to do this? Was I right to hire that private investigator, to gather that evidence, to transfer that deed, to orchestrate this confrontation? Or should I have stayed out of it, let Sarah and Brandon figure out their marriage on their own, trusted that the truth would eventually come out without my intervention? Because right now, watching Sarah cry, feeling her shake in my arms, hearing her broken, hiccuping breaths, I'm questioning everything. Brandon is my son. No matter what he did, no matter how much he disappointed me, he's still my child. And I just watched him leave my house on Christmas Eve with everything he owns in 2 suitcases and nowhere to go. Did I betray him? Did I choose Sarah over my own blood? Or did I do what parents are supposed to do, hold their children accountable, teach them that actions have consequences, love them enough to let them fail so they might learn to be better? I don't know. I honestly don't know. And I won't know for months, maybe years. I won't know until I see what Brandon does with this rock bottom moment. Will he learn from it? Will he grow? Will he become the man I raised him to be? Or will he double down on his victimhood, blame everyone else, and never take responsibility for the pain he caused? And Sarah, my sweet, strong, broken Sarah, will she rise from these ashes? Will she discover that she's more than Brandon's wife, more than a supporting character in someone else's story? Or will this break something in her that can't be fixed? These are the questions that haunt me as Christmas Eve turns into Christmas morning, as the clock ticks past midnight, as Sarah finally cries herself out and falls asleep on my couch with her head on my lap. These are the questions I can't answer yet. These are the questions that will only be answered in Act 3, in the resolution, in the aftermath of the storm I helped create. But there's one thing I know for certain. One thing I'm absolutely sure of as I sit here stroking Sarah's hair and watching the Christmas tree lights blur through my own tears. Whatever happens next, whatever challenges come, whatever pain and healing and growth lie ahead, Sarah won't face it alone. I gave her evidence tonight. I gave her a house. But more than that, I gave her permission to choose herself. And I'm going to be here every step of the way as she figures out what that choice means. Christmas morning arrives like an uninvited guest, quiet, awkward, and impossible to ignore. Sarah is still asleep on my couch, curled into herself like a child, her face puffy from hours of crying. The Christmas tree lights are still on because I never turn them off, and in the pale dawn light filtering through my curtains, they look tired and out of place. I haven't slept. I've spent the entire night watching Sarah breathe, replaying every moment of last evening, and asking myself the same question over and over again. Did I do the right thing? Because here's what nobody tells you about revenge. The moment itself, the confrontation, the reveal, the justice, that part feels powerful. It feels necessary. But the morning after? That's when the doubt creeps in like cold air under a door. That's when you start to wonder if you've helped someone or just pushed them off a different kind of cliff. Sarah stirs around 7 in the morning, her eyes opening slowly, and for just a second I see confusion cross her face. Then reality comes crashing back. I watch her remember. The box. The photos. Brandon leaving. Her hand instinctively goes to her ring finger, touching the bare skin where her wedding ring used to be, and her face crumples. It really happened, she whispers. It wasn't a nightmare. I reach over and squeeze her hand. It really happened. But you survived it. You're here. You're okay. She looks at me with red-rimmed eyes and asks the question I've been dreading. Am I okay, Vivian? Because I don't feel okay. I feel like I just burned down my entire life. And that's the question, isn't it? The one that's going to follow Sarah through the coming weeks and months. When you destroy something broken, does that automatically make you whole? Or do you just end up standing in the rubble, wondering what to build next? I make us coffee, strong and black the way Sarah likes it, and we sit at my kitchen table watching the sun come up. Neither of us mentions Christmas. The holiday feels obscene somehow, inappropriate, like laughing at a funeral. Sarah's phone has been buzzing nonstop since 6 a.m., but she hasn't looked at it. It's him, isn't it? I ask. She nods. 27 missed calls. 43 texts. I don't even want to know what they say. But I'm curious, so I ask if I can look. Sarah hands me the phone, and I scroll through Brandon's messages. They're exactly what I expected, a progression through the stages of a man losing control. The first messages, sent around 2 in the morning, are angry. Calling Sarah names I won't repeat, threatening legal action, saying she'll regret this, that she's making the biggest mistake of her life. Then around 4 a.m., the tone shifts. The messages become pleading, desperate. He loves her. He made a mistake. They can fix this if she'll just talk to him, just give him a chance to explain. By 6 a.m., anger returns, mixed with self-pity. How could she do this to him on Christmas? Where is he supposed to go? His own mother turned against him. Everyone's going to find out and his career will be ruined. And then the most recent message, sent just 10 minutes ago, that makes my blood run cold. I'm parked outside the house. Our house. I'm not leaving until you talk to me. Sarah's face goes white when I read it to her. He's at the house? Right now? I nod, and I can see panic rising in her eyes. This is the moment where theory becomes reality, where having the power means actually using it, where saying you're done with someone means enforcing that boundary when they refuse to accept it. What do I do? Sarah asks, and her voice is small, uncertain, nothing like the strong woman who kicked him out last night. And this is what I was afraid of. This is why I stayed awake all night wondering if I'd done the right thing. Because giving someone the tools to leave isn't the same as giving them the strength to stay gone. You call the police, I say firmly. The house is in your name. You told him to leave. If he's refusing to go, that's trespassing. But Sarah shakes her head, tears already forming. I can't call the police on him, Vivian. He's my husband. She trails off, and I finish the sentence for her. He's your husband who cheated on you for 14 months, who humiliated you in front of his mistress, who you kicked out last night with every legal right to do so. Sarah, if you don't enforce your boundaries now, he's going to keep pushing. Keep calling. Keep showing up. Keep making you question yourself until you let him back in. The question hangs between us like smoke. Will Sarah hold firm, or will the loneliness and doubt already creeping and make her fold? Because this is the real test, isn't it? Not the dramatic confrontation, but the quiet morning after when you're exhausted and scared and the person who hurt you is begging for another chance. This is where most people break. This is where the cycle starts again. But Sarah surprises me. She takes a deep breath, picks up her phone, and dials. Not Brandon. 911. I listen as she speaks to the dispatcher in a voice that's shaking but clear. My name is Sarah Mitchell. My husband and I are separated, and I asked him to leave our home last night. He's currently parked outside, refusing to leave, and I'd like him removed from the property. The dispatcher asks if she feels threatened. Sarah looks at me, uncertainty flickering across her face. Does she? Is Brandon dangerous or just desperate? I don't know, she admits. But I don't want him here, and he won't leave. That's enough. The dispatcher says officers are on their way, and Sarah hangs up. Then she does something I don't expect. She starts laughing. Not hysterical laughter, but the kind of exhausted, disbelieving laughter that comes when you realize you've just crossed a line you can never uncross. I just called the police on my husband, she says between laughs that are dangerously close to sobs. On Christmas morning. What kind of person does that? The kind of person who refuses to be a victim, I tell her. The kind of person who's done being manipulated. But even as I say it, I wonder if I'm trying to convince Sarah or myself. 20 minutes later, Sarah's phone rings. It's Brandon, and this time she answers on speaker so I can hear. His voice comes through frantic, confused. Sarah, there are police here. Did you call the cops on me? Are you serious right now? Sarah's voice is steady when she responds. You wouldn't leave when I asked. The house is mine, Brandon. You don't get to camp outside it and harass me. Harass you? I'm trying to talk to my wife. His voice rises, and I can hear an officer in the background telling him to calm down. I just want to talk. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. But Sarah doesn't give him those 5 minutes. We have nothing to talk about. Your lawyer can contact my lawyer when I file for divorce next week. Until then, stay away from the house, stay away from Vivian's house, and stop calling me. She hangs up before he can respond, and her hands are shaking so badly she nearly drops the phone. Did I just make everything worse? She asks me. No, I say firmly. You just made it clear that you meant what you said last night. That's not making it worse. That's following through. But the question lingers in the air even after the words fade. Did she make it worse? Will Brandon escalate now that he knows Sarah won't engage? Will this moment of strength cost her in ways we can't predict yet? We don't talk about it. Instead, Sarah goes to take a shower, and I start cleaning up from last night's disaster of a Christmas Eve dinner. The turkey is still sitting out, dried out and inedible now. Sarah's chocolate bourbon pecan pie is untouched on the counter. I throw it all away, and it feels like I'm disposing of evidence from a crime scene. When Sarah emerges from the shower, she's wearing clothes I'd lent her, sweatpants and an old college sweatshirt that's too big for her frame, and her wet hair is pulled back in a ponytail. She looks about 16 years old and completely lost. I need to go to the house eventually, she says. I need to see it. To make sure he actually left and didn't. She doesn't finish the sentence, but I know what she's thinking. Didn't trash it. Didn't take things that weren't his. Didn't leave some cruel message or destroy something meaningful. We'll go together, I tell her. After breakfast. You need to eat something. She shakes her head. I can't eat. My stomach feels like it's full of rocks. But I make her toast anyway, and she manages 3 bites before giving up. At 10 a.m., we drive to the house, Sarah's house, in my car because she can't face driving right now. The whole way there, she's silent, staring out the window like she's trying to memorize the landscape, like she's already saying goodbye to the life she used to have. When we pull into the driveway, everything looks normal. Deceivingly, horrifyingly normal. The Christmas wreath is still on the front door. The porch light is on. The lawn is covered in a light dusting of snow that fell overnight, unmarked by footprints. But when Sarah unlocks the door and we step inside, the normalcy shatters. Brandon came back. Sometime between the police making him leave and right now, he came back into the house, his house, in his mind, and he left his mark. The living room is a disaster. Pictures have been pulled off walls, some broken, glass scattered across the floor. The couch cushions are thrown around. Books have been swept off shelves. It's not violence exactly, but it's rage. It's a tantrum. It's a man who couldn't control the situation, so he destroyed whatever he could reach. Sarah stands in the doorway of her own living room, frozen, and I watch the color drain from her face. He did this, she whispers. After the police left, he came back and did this. And I see the exact moment doubt creeps in, the moment she starts to question whether she made the right choice. Because this is what happens when you leave an angry man. This is the consequence of choosing yourself over keeping the peace. But then Sarah does something I'll never forget. She walks carefully through the glass, picks up one of the broken picture frames, a wedding photo of her and Brandon, shattered beyond repair, and she looks at it for a long moment. Then she walks to the kitchen, throws it in the trash, and turns to face me. He tried to scare me, she says. He tried to make me feel like I did this, like his anger is my fault. She looks around at the destroyed room. But this just proves I made the right choice. This is who he really is when he doesn't get what he wants. The strength in her voice surprises me. Last night she was crying. This morning she was scared. But now, standing in the wreckage of her marriage, she's something else. She's resolved. We spend the next 3 hours cleaning up. I call my sister Ruth to come help, and between the three of us, we sweep up glass, reorganize books, write furniture, and slowly put the house back together. But we also do something else. We pack up everything that's Brandon's. Every piece of clothing he didn't take last night. Every book, every gadget, every single item that belongs to him gets boxed up and stacked in the garage. Sarah works methodically, almost robotically, and I can see her processing with every box she fills. This is her house now. Not theirs. Hers. By 2 p.m., the house looks different. Not just clean, but transformed. The pictures of Brandon are gone. The wedding photos are packed away. His presence has been systematically erased, and in its place, there's space. Empty space, yes, but also potential. Sarah stands in the middle of the living room, looking around, and I can't read her expression. It looks so empty, she says quietly. Ruth, ever practical, responds before I can. Empty isn't the same as ruined. Empty means you get to decide what comes next. Empty means possibility. Sarah turns to look at her, and I see tears in her eyes again, but they're different from last night's tears. These aren't tears of grief. They're tears of relief. I get to decide, she repeats. I haven't gotten to decide anything in so long. Brandon decided where we lived, how we spent money, when we saw friends, everything. And I just went along because that's what good wives do, right? They compromise. They support. They adapt. She laughs, but it's bitter. Except compromise only works when both people are doing it. I was the only one adapting. The words hang in the air, and I realize this is the moment Sarah's been building toward. Not the confrontation with Brandon. Not the evidence or the house or the divorce. This moment right here, where she articulates what was taken from her. Her agency. Her voice. Her right to decide what her own life should look like. And that's when I really know, that she's going to be okay. Not today. Maybe not for months. But eventually. Over the next several days, a pattern emerges. Brandon tries everything to get Sarah to engage with him. He sends flowers to her school. Sarah donates them to a nursing home. He shows up at my house. I tell him to leave or I'll call the police, and I mean it. He writes long emails about how Amber manipulated him, about how he's the real victim here. Sarah deletes them without reading past the first line. He has his friend Marcus call her to talk some sense into her. She blocks Marcus's number. Each attempt makes Sarah stronger. I watch her transform over these weeks from someone who doubted her decision to someone who's absolutely certain. She meets with a divorce attorney, a sharp, experienced woman named Rebecca Walsh, who I connected her with. Rebecca looks over all the evidence, reads through the investigation report, and tells Sarah something that makes her visibly relax. This is straightforward. The adultery is documented. The house is clearly yours. You have no children, minimal shared assets. If he doesn't contest it, you could be divorced in a few months. If he does contest it, he'll lose and waste money in the process. Either way, you're in a strong position. But here's what nobody prepared Sarah for. Here's the thing that catches her off guard even though it shouldn't. The loneliness. The house is hers, yes, but it's also empty. The bed is hers, but she sleeps on one side out of habit. The silence is hers, but sometimes silence is deafening. She calls me crying one night, 3 weeks after Christmas. I thought I'd feel free, she sobs into the phone. I thought getting rid of him would make everything better. But Vivian, I'm so lonely. The house is so quiet. And I keep thinking, what if I made a mistake? What if I threw away something that could have been fixed? This is the moment I've been waiting for. The moment where the doubt becomes overwhelming, where the reality of being alone feels worse than the reality of being betrayed. This is where most people go back. where they convince themselves that a bad relationship is better than no relationship. But I don't let Sarah go there. Do you remember how you felt on Christmas Eve? I ask her. Before everything happened? Do you remember serving Brandon and Amber dinner, listening to him insult your cooking, watching him ignore you while his mistress sat in your usual seat? She's quiet for a moment. Yes. Do you remember how small you felt? How worthless? Yes, she whispers. That's what you'd be going back to. Not the Brandon you married 9 years ago. Not the man you hoped he'd become. The man he is right now, the one who destroyed your living room in a tantrum, who's been harassing you for weeks, who chose another woman over you for 14 months. That's who you'd be taking back. Sarah is crying harder now, but she's listening. Being lonely is hard, I continue. Being alone after you've been with someone for 9 years is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But Sarah, you weren't alone in your marriage. You were lonely in it. There's a difference. At least now, the loneliness is honest. At least now, you're not pretending everything's fine while dying inside. She's quiet for a long time, and I wait, letting her process. Finally, she speaks. You're right. I know you're right. It's just, some days are harder than others. I know, I tell her. And on those hard days, you call me. Or Ruth. Or Rebecca. Or your friend Jennifer from work. You don't call Brandon. You don't convince yourself that going back is the answer. You sit with the discomfort until it passes, because I promise you it will pass. And slowly, painfully, it does pass. By February, Sarah is sleeping better. By March, she's redecorated the bedroom, painted it a soft blue she's always loved, but Brandon hated. She adopts a dog from the shelter, a golden retriever mix named Charlie, who follows her everywhere and sleeps at the foot of her bed. She starts therapy with a counselor who specializes in betrayal trauma, and I watch her begin to unpack not just what Brandon did, but the patterns that allowed it. The people-pleasing. The self-sacrifice. The belief that love means making yourself smaller so someone else can feel bigger. But here's the thing that surprises everyone, including Sarah. The thing that makes me believe this story might actually have a happy ending. Sarah starts to thrive. Not just survive, but actually thrive. She joins a book club and makes new friends, women who don't know her as Brandon's wife, who only know her as Sarah, the second-grade teacher who loves historical fiction and makes incredible homemade bread. She takes a pottery class on Saturday mornings and discovers she's actually good at it. She starts running, something she always wanted to try but Brandon dismissed as a waste of time, and signs up for a 5K. And one evening in April, she invites me and Ruth and Rebecca and some of her new friends to her house for dinner. Not a fancy dinner. Just good food made with care, served in a home that's bright and warm and full of laughter. Sarah is wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair is pulled back in a casual ponytail, and she's smiling, really, genuinely smiling, in a way I haven't seen in years. At one point during dinner, she raises her glass. I want to thank Vivian, she says, and everyone turns to look at me. For seeing what I couldn't see. For giving me the courage to leave. For giving me a home when I lost everything else. But I shake my head. You didn't lose everything, Sarah. You found yourself. She smiles, and there are tears in her eyes, but they're good tears this time. I did, she agrees. And it turns out, I'm pretty good company. Everyone laughs and we toast, to new beginnings, to courage, to choosing yourself even when it's terrifying. And in that moment, surrounded by women who support her and love her and see her value, Sarah looks free. Truly, completely free. But the story doesn't end there. Because life isn't neat, and healing isn't linear, and sometimes the people who hurt you don't just fade quietly into the background. In May, 5 months after Christmas Eve, Brandon calls me. Not Sarah, she blocked his number months ago. Me. Mom, he says, and his voice sounds different. Smaller somehow. Less certain. Can we talk? My first instinct is to say no, to protect Sarah by maintaining the wall we've built between her and Brandon. But something in his voice makes me pause. About what? About everything, he says. About what I did. About who I've become. I've been going to therapy, and my therapist thinks it would be helpful if I could apologize. Not to Sarah, I know she doesn't want to hear from me. But to you. For what I put you through. For making you choose. I agree to meet him at a coffee shop the next day, and I don't tell Sarah. Not because I'm hiding it, but because she doesn't need to know. She's moved on. She's building a new life. Brandon's redemption arc, if that's even what this is, isn't her responsibility to witness. When I arrive, Brandon is already there, and I barely recognize him. He's lost weight. His expensive suit is gone, replaced with jeans and a regular button-down. He looks tired, older, humbled in a way I've never seen before. We sit down, and for a long moment, neither of us speaks. Then Brandon does something that genuinely surprises me. He starts to cry. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he says, and he's not trying to hide the tears or maintain any kind of dignity. "I'm sorry for what I did to Sarah. I'm sorry for disrespecting you. I'm sorry for becoming someone Dad would be ashamed of. I'm sorry for everything." I wait. Because apologies are easy. It's what comes after the apology that matters. "My therapist has been helping me understand why I did what I did," Brandon continues. "And I don't want to make excuses, but I think when Dad died, something broke in me. He worked himself to death to give me opportunities, and I felt this pressure to be successful, to make it all worth it. And when I made partner at the firm, when I started making real money, I thought I'd finally arrived. I thought I'd earned the right to have whatever I wanted." He wipes his eyes. "But wanting and deserving are different things. And I wanted Amber because she made me feel like I'd won some kind of prize. Like I was successful enough to attract someone like her. And Sarah?" I ask quietly. "What did Sarah make you feel?" Brandon's face crumples. "Guilty. Inadequate. She made me feel like I was never going to be enough because she needed me in ways that felt like pressure. The fertility treatments, the way she looked at me like I was supposed to have all the answers, the way she depended on me emotionally. It felt like I was drowning in her expectations." I let that sit between us for a moment before responding. "You mean she expected you to be faithful? To be present? To prioritize your marriage? Those aren't unreasonable expectations, Brandon. Those are the bare minimum of being a husband." He nods miserably. I know that now. But at the time, I convinced myself that I deserved an escape. That I'd earned the right to be selfish. We talk for another hour. I don't forgive him. That's not my place, and honestly, I'm not sure I can, but I listen. And what I hear is a man who's genuinely grappling with what he did, who's trying to understand himself, who's facing the consequences of his choices. It doesn't undo the harm. It doesn't make Christmas Eve less painful or Sarah's tears less real. But it's something. It's a beginning. As we're leaving, Brandon asks the question I've been dreading. "Is she okay? Sarah? Is she happy?" I consider lying, consider telling him she's miserable and that he destroyed her. But that would be cruel, and more importantly, it wouldn't be true. She's more than okay, I tell him honestly. She's thriving. She's got a life that's entirely her own now, and she's happy in a way I don't think she was for a long time. I watch Brandon process this information, and I can't tell if what crosses his face is relief or regret. Maybe both. "Good," he says finally. "That's good. She deserves that." And then he asks me one more thing. "Do you think she'll ever forgive me?" I look at my son, this flawed, broken, humbled version of the boy I raised, and I tell him the truth. "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But Brandon, her forgiveness isn't what you should be working toward. You should be working toward becoming someone worthy of forgiveness, whether you ever receive it or not. That's the real work." He nods, and I see understanding in his eyes. Then he hugs me, something he hasn't done in years, and whispers, "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when you had every right to." I drive home thinking about that conversation, about the complexity of loving someone who's done terrible things, about the difference between accountability and abandonment. And I realize something that's been nagging at me since Christmas Eve. I didn't destroy Brandon. He destroyed himself, and I just refused to help him hide the wreckage. There's a difference. A crucial difference that I needed 5 months to understand. The divorce is finalized in June. Sarah signs the papers without hesitation, without drama, without a final confrontation. Brandon doesn't contest anything. He signs his half, accepts that the house is Sarah's, divides their minimal shared assets fairly, and walks away from the marriage he destroyed. And just like that, it's over. 9 years reduced to signatures on legal documents. Sarah calls me after it's official, and I expect her to be emotional, sad or relieved, or some complicated mixture of both. But she just sounds calm. It's done, she says. I'm officially Sarah Thompson again. Not Sarah Mitchell. Just me. How does that feel? I ask. She's quiet for a moment, considering. Like closing a book I've been trying to finish for a long time. Like I can finally start a new story now. 3 months later, Sarah does something that surprises all of us. She calls me and asks if I'd be interested in renting out one of the bedrooms in her house. There's a new teacher at school, she explains. Fresh out of college, can't afford much. I have 3 bedrooms and it's just me and Charlie. The house should be full of life, don't you think? I tell her I think it's perfect. And I realize in that moment that Sarah has done something remarkable. She's taken the house that was supposed to be her prison, the place where her marriage died, where Brandon's betrayal happened, and she's transformed it into something else entirely. A home. Her home. A place where she gets to decide who stays and who goes, who's welcome and who's not. That's not just healing. That's power. So let me tell you where everyone is now, almost a year after that catastrophic Christmas Eve. Sarah is thriving. She's got a roommate she adores, a dog who makes her laugh, friends who see her value, and a life that's entirely her own design. She's stopped dating not out of fear, but because she's genuinely happy being alone. She's learning who she is outside of being someone's wife, and she's in no rush to give that up. Brandon is rebuilding. He moved to a smaller firm, taking a pay cut but finding more balance. He's still in therapy, still working on himself, still grappling with the man he became and the man he wants to be. He doesn't try to contact Sarah anymore. He's accepted that chapter is closed. He calls me once a month and we talk. It's awkward sometimes, but it's honest. I'm proud of him for doing the work, even if I'm still disappointed in what necessitated it. And me? I'm learning something I didn't expect. I'm learning that loving someone sometimes means letting them fall so they can learn to stand on their own. I'm learning that rescue isn't always the kindness it appears to be. I'm learning that the most painful gifts are sometimes the most necessary ones. That silver-wrapped box I gave Sarah on Christmas Eve didn't just contain evidence and a house deed. It contained permission. Permission to see the truth. Permission to choose herself. Permission to believe she deserved better than what she was settling for. And that's the gift I'm most proud of giving, even though it cost me the relationship with my son that I used to have, even though it meant destroying a marriage, even though it meant watching people I love experience pain I helped orchestrate. Because here's what I've learned in the year since that night. Sometimes love looks like boundaries. Sometimes family means holding people accountable. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to watch them destroy themselves in silence. And sometimes, the gift someone needs most isn't comfort or reassurance or support for the choices they're making. Sometimes what they need is someone who loves them enough to hand them the truth and say, "This is yours now. What you do with it is up to you." So here's my question for you, the one I want you to sit with long after this story ends. When someone you love is in a situation that's destroying them, what do? Do you stay silent to keep the peace? Do you support them unconditionally even when their choices are harmful? Do you intervene, knowing that intervention might mean losing them? There's no easy answer. No clear right or wrong. Just impossible choices and the courage to make them anyway. I made my choice that Christmas Eve when I handed Sarah that box. I chose to give her power instead of just sympathy. I chose to give her options instead of just a shoulder to cry on. I chose to believe she was strong enough to face the truth and rebuild from it. And you know what? I was right. She was strong enough. She is strong enough. And if you're watching this right now because you're in a similar situation, whether you're the one being betrayed, or the one watching someone you love be betrayed, or even the one who's done the betraying, I want you to know something. The truth doesn't destroy you. Living in lies destroys you. The truth just forces you to face what was already broken and decide whether you're going to fix it or walk away from it. Sarah chose to walk away, and it saved her life. Brandon was forced to face what he'd done, and it's making him a better man. And me? I lost the version of my son I thought I had, but I gained a daughter I'm proud to call family and a son who's finally becoming someone worth knowing. So let me leave you with this. That Christmas Eve changed everything. It was painful and messy and complicated, and there were moments I questioned every decision I made. But would I do it again? Knowing what I know now, seeing where everyone ended up, would I still wrap that box and hand it to Sarah and watch the fallout unfold? Yes. 1,000 times yes. Because the pain of truth is temporary, but the pain of lies is forever. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, was I right to do what I did? If you were in my position, would you have stayed out of it, or would you have intervened like I did? If you were Sarah, would you have taken Brandon back, or would you have walked away like she did? And if you were Brandon, do you think you could have come back from what you did? I read every single comment, and I want to know what you think because these questions don't have easy answers. And if this story resonated with you, if you've been Sarah, or if you've watched someone you love go through something similar, or if you're struggling with whether to stay in a situation that's hurting you, I want you to know you're not alone. Hit that subscribe button because I share stories about real people facing impossible choices, about betrayal and revenge and healing and everything in between. And hit that like button if you think Sarah made the right choice, or drop a comment if you disagree. I want to hear all perspectives because that's how we learn from each other. Most importantly, if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone who's staying in a situation that's destroying them, someone who needs permission to choose themselves, someone who needs to know that leaving is possible and life on the other side is real, share this video with them. Sometimes we need to hear other people's stories to find the courage to change our own. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community where we talk about the hard things, the messy things, the real things that happen in families and relationships. I'll see you in the next video, but until then, remember, you deserve truth, you deserve respect, and you deserve to choose yourself, even when it's terrifying. Especially when it's terrifying. Now go tell me in the comments what you would have done. I'm waiting. Thank you for listening to my story. And thank you for being here.